She was forced to mate with the pack's ugliest werewolf, but she turned the tables. Chapter 1: The Opening Hook. The mating ceremony was supposed to be the worst day of Charlotte's life. She stood in the center of the Ironwood Pack's great hall, wearing the traditional white dress that marked her as a bride, and tried not to let her hands shake. Around her, 200 pack members watched with expressions ranging from pity to barely concealed amusement. They all knew what was about to happen. They all knew she was being punished. Charlotte Hayes. Alpha Dominic's voice boomed through the hall, cold and authoritative. You have been found guilty of defying direct orders, of putting pack security at risk, and of general insubordination. Your punishment has been decided by the council. Charlotte kept her chin up, refusing to show fear even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew what was coming. The whole pack had been gossiping about it for weeks. You will be mated to Cade Blackwood. Immediately. Tonight. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Charlotte heard the words beneath the whispers. The cruel ones, the pitying ones, the satisfied ones from people who'd never liked her anyway. Poor thing. Mated to the beast. She deserves it. Always thought she was too good for pack law. At least Cade will finally have someone. Even if it's forced. Charlotte's eyes found him in the crowd. Cade Blackwood stood at the back of the hall, partially hidden in shadows as if he'd tried to make himself invisible. He was massive, easily 6'7", with a build that was more bear than wolf. But it wasn't his size that made people call him the beast. It was his face. Scars covered the left side of his features, thick, raised tissue that pulled at his eye and mouth, the result of a rogue attack when he was 15. The scars continued down his neck, disappearing beneath his collar, and Charlotte had heard whispers that they covered half his body. His right side was handsome enough, strong jaw, high cheekbones, dark eyes, but the scarring was severe enough that most people couldn't look at him without flinching. He was the pack's Omega, their lowest-ranked member, given the worst jobs and the least respect despite being one of their best fighters. And now he was going to be Charlotte's mate. Her punishment for daring to defy the Alpha. Hey there, story lovers. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited you're here. Seriously, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments because I absolutely love seeing where my amazing community tunes in from. How are you all doing today? I hope you're ready for this story because it's intense, emotional, and absolutely addictive. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you do not want to miss what happens next. This channel is all about those dark, dramatic, utterly consuming stories that grab your heart and don't let go. Your support means everything. Now let me tell you about Charlotte, because her life is about to get a whole lot more complicated than she ever imagined. Charlotte Hayes had never been good at following rules. At 24, she was the pack's head tracker. One of the best they'd ever had. With an ability to read trails and signs that bordered on supernatural even for a werewolf. She was smart, capable, and completely unwilling to bow to authority just because someone had an alpha title. Which was exactly how she'd ended up here. 3 weeks ago, Alpha Dominic had ordered the trackers to stop investigating strange scents on the western border. Charlotte had ignored that order, convinced something dangerous was lurking just beyond their territory. She'd been right. A group of rogues had been planning an attack. Her investigation had given the pack advance warning and saved lives. It had also humiliated the Alpha, who'd been proven wrong and made to look incompetent. Dominic was not a wolf who forgave humiliation. Come forward, Cade Blackwood, the Alpha commanded. Cade moved through the crowd and Charlotte watched people step back to give him extra room. Not out of respect but out of discomfort. He kept his scarred side slightly turned away, a habit she'd noticed he had, as if he could somehow make himself less disturbing to look at. When he reached the center of the hall standing across from Charlotte, she got her first close look at him. He was even bigger up close, and the scars were more extensive than she'd realized. But his eyes, dark brown and currently filled with barely suppressed rage, were focused not on her but on Alpha Dominic. You will mate with Charlotte Hayes, Dominic said, his smile cruel. Bind yourself to her, take her as your own, and perhaps elevate yourself from the bottom of this pack's hierarchy. Though I doubt even a forced mating will make anyone forget what you are. Charlotte saw Cade's jaw clench, saw the way his hands fisted at his sides. He was furious, not at her she realized but at the situation, at being used as a punishment, at having his Omega status thrown in his face, at everything this mating represented. I don't accept, Charlotte said clearly, her voice carrying through the hall. Silence fell like a hammer. Alpha Dominic's eyes narrowed dangerously. Excuse me. I don't accept this mating. You can't force someone to bond against their will. It's against council law. Charlotte held his gaze steadily. I'll accept punishment for my insubordination. I'll take a rank reduction, extra duties, whatever. But I won't be forced into a mating bond. You dare, Dominic started, but another voice cut him off. She's right. It was Cade, and his voice was deeper than Charlotte expected, rough like gravel. Forced matings are illegal. The council would strip your alpha status if they found out you'd ordered one. Dominic's face flushed with rage. Then perhaps I should clarify. This isn't a forced mating. This is a forced marriage. A human ceremony that requires no magical bond, just legal paperwork and witnesses. Perfectly within pack law. His smile was vicious. You'll be married tonight. Bound by human law and pack tradition. And if you refuse Charlotte, you'll be exiled. Permanently. No pack, no family, no protection. Charlotte felt ice flood her veins. Exile was a death sentence for most wolves. Without a pack, she'd be vulnerable to rogues, to hunters, to any supernatural threat that decided a lone wolf made easy prey. And you, Dominic turned to Cade. If you refuse, I'll make sure every pack in this territory knows you rejected a mate out of vanity. That you were too ashamed of yourself to accept a woman, even one forced on you. Your Omega status will follow you everywhere. It was masterfully cruel. Dominic had boxed them both in, given them the illusion of choice while making sure refusal would destroy them. Charlotte looked at Cade, really looked at him, and saw the same calculation happening behind his eyes. He was weighing options, measuring costs, trying to find a way out that didn't exist. I'll do it, Charlotte said finally. I'll marry him. But I want something in return. Dominic raised an eyebrow. You're not in a position to negotiate. Aren't I? You want this marriage to humiliate me, to prove you're in control. But if I refuse and accept exile, you lose that satisfaction. I walk away and you look like a tyrant who drove out one of your best trackers over wounded pride. Charlotte crossed her arms. So here's my offer. I marry Cade. But I keep my position as head tracker, I keep my rank, and you don't interfere with my work. This marriage is punishment enough. Don't sabotage my career too. For a long moment Dominic just stared at her. Then he laughed. A cold, humorless sound. You have nerve, I'll give you that. Fine. You keep your position and rank. But you'll live in Cade's cabin, fulfill all the duties of a wife, and present a united front to the pack. Any hint that this marriage is a sham, any suggestion you're not taking it seriously, and you're both exiled. Understood. Understood, Charlotte said. And you, Blackwood? Do you accept these terms? Cade's eyes met Charlotte's for the first time. She saw anger there, yes, but also something that looked like resignation. Like he'd been expecting something like this his whole life. I accept, he said quietly. The ceremony was brief and brutal in its efficiency. A pack elder spoke the traditional words, binding them in pack law if not in magical mate bonds. Charlotte repeated vows she didn't mean, slipped a ring on Cade's finger that felt like a shackle, and accepted one in return that burned like a brand. When it was done, when they were officially married in the eyes of pack and human law, Dominic dismissed the gathering with obvious satisfaction. Congratulations, he said to Charlotte as people began to disperse. I hope you and the beast will be very happy together. Charlotte didn't respond. She just turned to find Cade already walking toward the exit. His massive shoulders hunched like he was trying to make himself smaller. She followed him out into the night, away from the hall and the pitying looks and the whispered comments. He led her down a path into the forest, toward the edge of pack territory where she knew the Omega's cabin stood. Isolated, far from the center of pack life, where he could be forgotten. They walked in silence for 15 minutes before Cade finally stopped in front of a small cabin. It was well maintained despite its isolation. The porch was swept clean, the windows were intact, and there was even a small garden off to one side. You can have the bedroom, Cade said without looking at her. I'll sleep on the couch. Cade. I didn't want this either. His voice was flat, emotionless. You're not the only one being punished tonight. But we're stuck with each other now, so we might as well set some ground rules. He finally turned to face her fully, and Charlotte forced herself not to look away from his scars. She'd been right. They were extensive, covering most of the left side of his face and disappearing down his neck. But his eyes were clear and intelligent, and there was strength in the set of his jaw despite the damage. Rule 1, Cade continued. We stay out of each other's way. You do your job, I do mine, and we interact as little as possible. Rule 2. No one outside this cabin needs to know this marriage is fake. We maintain appearances to keep Dominic satisfied. Rule 3. This is temporary. We give it a year, make sure Dominic's attention has moved on, and then we quietly dissolve the marriage. You go back to your life, I go back to mine, and we pretend this never happened. Charlotte studied him, this massive scarred wolf who'd been forced into marriage with her, who was already planning their divorce before they'd even spent one night under the same roof. Okay, she said. But I have a rule too. What? We treat each other with basic respect. I won't pretend you don't exist, and you won't treat me like an unwanted burden. We're stuck together for a year. We might as well not make each other miserable. Something flickered across Cade's expression, surprise maybe or confusion. Like he'd expected her to demand distance or to treat him as cruelly as the rest of the pack did. Deal, he said finally. He held out his hand. His right hand, she noticed, keeping the scarred left one at his side. Charlotte shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip that he was carefully restraining. "Welcome home," Cade said, the words bitter. "I'll get you some blankets for the bed." As he disappeared into the cabin, Charlotte stood on the porch and looked up at the moon, full and bright and uncaring about the mess her life had become. Married to the Pax Omega. Bound to a man who'd already planned their separation. Living in exile at the edge of territory with someone who clearly wanted nothing to do with her. This was supposed to be her punishment. But looking at the cabin, small but sturdy, maintained with obvious care despite its owner's low status, and thinking about Cade's eyes, about the intelligence and pain she'd seen there, Charlotte wondered if maybe Dominic had miscalculated. Maybe being married to the beast wouldn't be the worst thing after all. Or maybe she was just trying to make herself feel better about a situation she couldn't change. Either way, this was her life now. And if there was one thing Charlotte Hayes was good at, it was making the best of impossible situations. Even if the impossible situation involved a forced marriage to a man the whole pack had taught her to fear. Chapter 2. Character Foundation. The cabin was small but surprisingly comfortable. Cade had clearly put effort into making it livable. There was a worn but clean couch, a small kitchen with herbs growing on the windowsill, and bookshelves that lined almost every wall. Charlotte found herself drawn to the books, reading titles as Cade disappeared into what she assumed was the bedroom. History, strategy, philosophy, even poetry. This wasn't what she'd expected from someone the pack dismissed as nothing more than a scarred brute. Here. Cade emerged with blankets and a pillow, which he set on the couch. Bedrooms through there. Bathrooms next to it. I usually wake up around 5 to start my duties, so I'll try to be quiet. Your duties? Charlotte asked. I maintain the training grounds, help with construction projects, and handle anything that requires heavy lifting that no one else wants to do. His tone was matter of fact, but Charlotte heard the bitterness underneath. Omega work. The job's too beneath everyone else. That's not right. You're one of the pack's best fighters. I've seen you train. You should be in the warrior ranks, not doing manual labor. Cade's laugh was harsh. When you look like I do, fighting ability doesn't matter much. People don't want to train with the beast, don't want to strategize with someone they can barely look at. So I do the work no one else will, and I stay out of everyone's way. Has it always been like this? Since you were scarred? Since before that, actually. Cade moved to the kitchen, putting distance between them. I was always bigger than the other pups, always a bit of an outsider. The scars just gave everyone an excuse to formalize what they already felt. Charlotte watched him move around the small space, noting how he angled himself to keep his scarred side away from her view. It was an unconscious habit, she realized, one he'd probably developed over years of people flinching away from his appearance. You don't have to do that, she said. Hide your scars, I mean. I'm not going to faint or run screaming. Cade froze. Force of habit. I get it. But we're going to be living together for a year. You shouldn't have to contort yourself in your own home just to make me comfortable. Charlotte moved closer. For what it's worth, the scars aren't that bad. I've seen worse injuries in the field. You're lying. I'm not. Last year, I tracked a wolf who'd been mauled by a bear. By the time I found him, he'd lost an eye, most of his face, and his entire left arm. Your scars are significant, yes, but you're functional. You're still strong, still capable. The pack just likes having an Omega to look down on, and you happen to fit the role they needed. Cade turned to face her fully for the first time. His expression caught between disbelief and something that might have been hope. You really believe that? I know it. Dominic is a weak alpha who maintains control through fear and humiliation. He needs someone at the bottom of the hierarchy to remind everyone else they could fall to. Before your scars, it was someone else. After you, it'll be someone else. You're just convenient. That's a cynical view. It's an accurate one. Charlotte settled onto the couch. I've been in this pack my whole life, Cade. I've seen how Dominic operates. He rules through intimidation, not respect. Half the pack would revolt if they weren't terrified of ending up where you are. Cade was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to sit in a chair across from her. Not the couch, she noticed. Maintaining distance. Tell me about you, he said. How does the pack's best tracker end up defying direct orders and getting forced into marriage? I'm stubborn, Charlotte said simply. And I have this annoying habit of being right when the alpha is wrong. 3 weeks ago, Dominic ordered us to ignore signs of rogue activity on the western border. Said it was probably just wildlife. I investigated anyway and found evidence of a planned attack. We were able to reinforce our defenses and drive the rogues off when they came. Let me guess. Dominic took credit for the successful defense. Naturally. But everyone knew I'd been the one to discover the threat. It made him look incompetent, and he doesn't forgive being made to look bad. Charlotte pulled her knees up to her chest. I knew he'd punish me. I just didn't expect this. Marriage to the beast. The ultimate humiliation for someone with your status. Cade's voice was carefully neutral, but Charlotte heard the pain underneath. That's what Dominic thinks. But honestly, she met his eyes. There are worse fates. At least you're not an asshole. Half the unmated males in this pack are. And I'd have run rather than be forced to mate with them. A surprised laugh escaped Cade, rough and unused like he didn't laugh often. That's a low bar. Welcome to my life. Charlotte smiled slightly. So here's the situation as I see it. We're stuck together for a year, living in this cabin, pretending to be happily married while secretly counting down the days until we can divorce. We can make that year miserable by avoiding each other and building resentment. Or we can try to make it bearable. What are you suggesting? That we actually try to coexist. Maybe even become friends if that's not too crazy. We share the space. Share meals sometimes. Actually talk to each other instead of tiptoeing around pretending the other doesn't exist. Charlotte leaned forward. I meant what I said about basic respect. You're not my punishment, Cade. You're my husband, temporarily. And you deserve to be treated like a person, not a shameful secret. Cade stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Why would you want to be friends with me? Why wouldn't I? You seem intelligent, you clearly read based on the library you've got here, and you've survived years of being treated like shit by this pack without becoming bitter and cruel. That shows character. She gestured around the cabin. Plus, this place is well maintained. You have actual herbs growing instead of just surviving on packaged food. And you offered me the bedroom without hesitation. You're considerate. That's rare. You're either the most optimistic person I've ever met or completely insane. Probably both. But I'm serious, Cade. We don't have to make each other miserable just because Dominic wanted us to be. Cade was quiet for a long time, studying her like he was trying to figure out if she was genuine or playing some kind of long game. Finally he said, okay, we can try. But I'm not good at this. At talking to people. At being around them. I've spent so many years being avoided that I've forgotten how to interact normally. Then we'll both be learning. Charlotte stood and extended her hand. Hi, I'm Charlotte Hayes. Stubborn tracker, occasional rule breaker, and your new roommate for the next year. Nice to meet you. After a moment's hesitation, Cade shook her hand. Cade Blackwood. Pac Omega professional heavy lifter, and apparently your husband. The pleasure is complicated. Charlotte laughed. Fair enough. So roommate, what's the sleeping arrangement? Because I meant what I said. I'm not kicking you out of your own bed. The bedroom's yours. I've been sleeping on this couch for years anyway. It's comfortable. That's ridiculous. It's your house. And you're my wife even if it's fake. I'm not making you sleep on the couch. Cade's tone was firm. Besides, you're still head tracker. You need actual rest, not whatever sleep you'd get on this lumpy sofa. Charlotte recognized a battle she wasn't going to win. Fine. But we're getting you a better couch. If you're going to be stubborn about this, at least you'll be comfortable. You don't have to. I want to. Consider it my contribution to making this year bearable for both of us. Charlotte moved toward the bedroom then paused. Hey Cade. Thank you. For not making this harder than it has to be. A lot of wolves would have taken their anger out on me. I'm angry at Dominic, not you. You didn't choose this any more than I did. Cade's expression softened slightly. Get some rest, Charlotte. Tomorrow's going to be interesting when the pack realizes we're actually living together. Charlotte went into the bedroom, small but clean, with a sturdy bed and a window that looked out into the forest. She could hear Cade moving around in the living area, the sounds of him settling in for the night on that inadequate couch. This wasn't how she'd imagined her life going. Married at 24 to a man she barely knew. Living in a cabin at the edge of pack territory, bound by a punishment that was meant to break her. But lying there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the forest and the quiet movements of her unexpected husband, Charlotte felt something that surprised her. Hope. Maybe this year wouldn't be the disaster everyone expected. Maybe she could make something good out of a bad situation. And maybe, just maybe, the pack's ugliest werewolf wasn't ugly at all. Just misunderstood, isolated, and in desperate need of someone who'd look past the scars to see the person underneath. Charlotte could do that. She would do that, even if it was only for a year. Chapter 3. The Inciting Incident. Charlotte woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of someone moving around the cabin. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then the previous night came rushing back. The forced marriage. Cade. The cabin at the edge of territory. She checked her phone, 5:30 a.m. Through the bedroom door, she could hear Cade in the kitchen, trying to be quiet and mostly succeeding. Charlotte got up, dressed quickly in her tracker gear, and emerged to find Cade at the small stove, cooking what looked like eggs and toast. Morning, she said, and watched him startle, nearly dropping the spatula. You're up early, Cade said, quickly angling his scarred side away. I was trying not to wake you. I'm a tracker. We wake up early. Charlotte moved to the coffee pot. Is there enough for two? Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure if you'd want. He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. If I'd want to eat with you? Charlotte finished gently. Cade, we had this conversation last night. I'm not going to pretend you don't exist. We're living together. We should probably share meals occasionally. She poured herself coffee and sat at the small kitchen table. After a moment's hesitation, Cade brought over 2 plates of food and sat across from her, but angled so his scars were less visible. So, Charlotte said around a bite of surprisingly good eggs. What's your day look like? Training ground maintenance from 6 to 9. Then I'm helping reinforce the northern fence line. There's been some damage from the storm last week. Cade ate quickly, like he expected to be interrupted or told to leave at any moment. You. Border patrol on the western edge. Dominic might have ordered us to stop investigating, but I'm not letting those rogue scents go unchecked. Charlotte smiled slightly. I'm just going to be more subtle about it this time. That's dangerous. If he finds out. He won't. I'm good at my job, Cade. I can patrol and investigate without leaving evidence of insubordination. She studied him. Why do you care if I get in trouble anyway? Because if you get in trouble, Dominic will find a way to blame me too. And because... He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Because you've been decent to me. That's rare enough that I'd rather not lose it. I'm not going anywhere, Charlotte said firmly. Except on patrol. Want to walk together? I assume you have to pass the training grounds to get to the northern fence. You want to be seen with me? You're my husband. We're supposed to be living together, remember? We need to maintain appearances. Charlotte stood and grabbed her tracking pack. Besides, better we control the narrative than let the gossips make something up. They left the cabin together as the sun was just starting to rise. The path took them through packed territory, and Charlotte saw the moment people started noticing them. The double takes, the whispered conversations, the shocked expressions. Charlotte made a point of walking close to Cade, occasionally touching his arm when she wanted to point something out, acting like being near him was completely natural. What are you doing? Cade asked quietly after she'd touched his arm for the 3rd time. Claiming you, Charlotte said simply. Let them see we're together, that I'm not ashamed to be seen with you. It'll make the rest of this year easier if people accept us as a couple from the start. You don't have to. I want to. Now stop arguing and tell me about that book I saw on your shelf. The one about ancient pack hierarchies. As they walked and talked, Charlotte noticed people's reactions shifting from shock to confusion. They'd expected Charlotte to be miserable, ashamed, treating Cade like a burden. Instead, here she was chatting with him like he was a person, touching him casually, acting like being his wife was normal. It was confusing the hell out of everyone, which gave Charlotte a vicious sense of satisfaction. They reached the training grounds, where several warriors were already warming up. The moment Cade appeared, the mood shifted. Conversations stopped, people found excuses to move away, and the hostility was palpable. Blackwood, one of the warriors, a man named Ryan who Charlotte had never liked, called out. About time. The equipment needs to be checked and the weapon sharpened. Get to it. It was dismissive, rude, treating Cade like a servant rather than a pack member. Charlotte felt anger spike through her. Actually, she said, stepping forward, Cade can't start on that just yet. We're having breakfast together, and I'd like to finish our conversation about territorial strategy. You know, the kind of high-level tactical discussion that requires actual intelligence to follow. Ryan's face flushed. That's not. He has duties. Which he'll complete, I'm sure. But his wife takes priority. Charlotte smiled sweetly. I hope that's not a problem. The warriors exchanged glances. No one wanted to challenge the head tracker directly, especially not over the Omega. But Charlotte could see their confusion. Why was she defending him? Why was she acting like being married to Cade was something to be proud of? No problem, Ryan finally muttered. Take your time. After they walked away, Cade said quietly, You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. They were being disrespectful. Charlotte's jaw was tight with anger. Does that happen a lot? People treating you like a servant. Constantly. It's part of being Omega. Cade's voice was carefully neutral, like he'd trained himself not to feel the hurt anymore. Well, it stops now. Or at least when I'm around it stops. You're my husband, and I don't let people disrespect what's mine. Cade stopped walking and stared at her. What's yours? Charlotte realized what she'd said and felt heat rush to her face. I just meant for appearances. We're maintaining the illusion of a real marriage, remember? That includes me defending you like a wife would. Right. For appearances. Cade's expression was unreadable. You're very committed to this act. I'm committed to not letting Dominic win, Charlotte corrected. He wanted to humiliate us both. I'm choosing to prove him wrong instead. They continued on, and Charlotte headed to the western border while Cade went to handle his duties. Her patrol was routine. No fresh signs of rogues, just the usual wildlife and familiar scents. But as she worked, she couldn't stop thinking about the way the warriors had treated Cade. The casual cruelty that he'd accepted as normal. It wasn't right. He was strong, capable, clearly intelligent despite the pack treating him like he was stupid. And okay, yes, he had scars, but so did half the warriors in their pack. His were just more visible, more extensive. That shouldn't define his entire existence. Charlotte was so lost in thought that she almost missed it. A fresh scent marker, deliberately placed at the edge of their territory. Not rogue, too organized. But not friendly either. She examined the marker carefully, photographing it with her phone and noting its exact position. Someone was testing their borders, leaving signs to see if they'd be noticed. This was exactly what she'd warned Dominic about 3 weeks ago, and he'd dismissed her concerns. Charlotte continued her patrol, finding 2 more markers along the western edge. Each one was carefully placed, each one marking territory like a challenge. Someone was planning something, and the pack was vulnerable because their alpha refused to listen. By the time Charlotte returned to the cabin that evening, she was exhausted and frustrated. She found Cade on the porch, cleaning tools, his shirt off despite the evening chill. "Hey," she said, then froze as she got her first real look at his scars. They covered his entire left side. His face, his neck, his shoulder and chest and arm. The scarring was extensive, raised and discolored, clearly from a vicious attack. But underneath the scar tissue she could see the muscle, the strength, the power he'd built despite being treated like he was broken. Cade noticed her looking and immediately reached for his shirt. "Sorry, I didn't expect you back yet. Don't apologize." Charlotte moved closer, studying the scars with the tracker's analytical eye. This was from a rogue attack? When I was 15, 3 rogues ambushed me while I was out hunting alone. By the time patrol found me, I'd killed all 3, but... He gestured to his scars. The damage was done. "You killed 3 rogues at 15? Charlotte's eyebrows rose. "Cade, that's incredible. Most adults couldn't do that. I was big for my age. And desperate." His expression was distant, remembering. The healers did what they could, but the wounds were too severe. The scarring was permanent. And the pack decided that made you Omega. The pack decided I was too disturbing to look at, too damaged to be useful for anything but manual labor. Bitterness crept into his voice. Never mind that I'd saved myself against impossible odds. Never mind that I kept training, kept fighting, kept proving I was capable. The scars were all anyone could see. Charlotte felt fury building in her chest. "That's insane. You should be celebrated as a survivor, not ostracized." "Should be, yeah. But we both know that's not how packs work." Cade pulled his shirt on, covering the scars. "Perception matters more than reality. I look like a monster, so I'm treated like one." "You're not a monster." Charlotte sat on the porch steps. "You're a survivor who's been systematically broken down by a pack that doesn't deserve you. Why do you care?" Cade's voice was genuinely confused. "We're only married because we were forced to be. In a year we'll divorce and you'll go back to your life. Why waste energy caring about my situation?" "Because it's wrong. And because..." Charlotte paused, trying to find the right words. "Because I know what it's like to be punished for being good at what you do. Different circumstances, sure, but the same result. An alpha who feels threatened trying to break you down." They sat in silence for a moment, the evening air cooling around them. Then Charlotte said, "I found markers today. On the western border. Someone's testing our defenses." Cade's attention sharpened immediately. More rogues. Maybe. Or something worse. The markers were too organized, too deliberate for typical rogue behavior. She pulled out her phone and showed him the photos. "What do you think?" Cade studied the images with clear intelligence, his eyes scanning the details she'd captured. "These are challenge markers. Someone's declaring intent to test the pack's strength, either for an eventual takeover attempt or to assess our weaknesses before an alliance negotiation." "That's what I thought too. But Dominic won't listen if I report it. He'll just accuse me of defying orders again." "Then don't report it to him. Document everything, build an evidence file, and if something happens you'll have proof you tried to warn them." Cade handed back her phone. "And in the meantime be careful. If someone's planning an incursion they might target lone wolves first. Especially ones who patrol regularly in predictable patterns. I can take care of myself." "I know. But that doesn't mean you should have to." Cade's expression was serious. "If you need backup, even unofficial backup, tell me. I might be Omega, but I can still fight." Charlotte felt something warm settle in her chest. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They went inside and Charlotte found that Cade had made dinner. A simple stew that smelled amazing. They ate together at the small table, talking about the markers, about pack politics, about everything except the forced marriage that had brought them together. And Charlotte realized something surprising. She liked Cade. Really liked him. He was smart and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. He listened when she talked, asked intelligent questions, and treated her like an equal. It was more than she could say for most of the pack. That night, lying in bed in the darkness, Charlotte heard sounds from the living room, Cade moving around, clearly uncomfortable on the couch. She felt a pang of guilt. This was his home. He shouldn't be relegated to a lumpy couch because she was forced to live here. But when she tried to argue earlier, he'd been immovable. So Charlotte let it go, making a mental note to do something about the sleeping arrangements soon. Because if they were going to make this year work, if they were going to turn this forced marriage into something bearable, they both needed to be comfortable. And maybe, just maybe, they could turn Dominic's attempt to humiliate them into something that actually benefited them both. Charlotte fell asleep with that thought, feeling more optimistic than she had any right to be. In the living room, Cade lay on the uncomfortable couch and stared at the ceiling, his mind racing with thoughts of the woman sleeping in his bed. She wasn't what he'd expected. At all. He'd braced himself for revulsion, for her to barely tolerate his presence, to count down the days until she could escape. That's what anyone forced to marry the beast would feel. But Charlotte had defended him in front of the warriors, had touched him casually repeatedly in public where people could see, had studied his scars with curiosity rather than horror, had sat with him at dinner and talked to him like he was a person worth knowing. It was confusing and terrifying and made him hope for things he trained himself not to want, because in a year this would end. She'd divorce him and move on with her life, and he'd go back to being the Omega everyone avoided. He couldn't let himself forget that, no matter how much her kindness made him want to. Chapter 4: Rising Tension. The next 2 weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. Charlotte would wake early, find Cade already up making coffee, and they'd share breakfast while discussing their plans for the day. She'd patrol or track, he'd handle Omega duties, and they'd reconvene in the evening to share dinner and talk about what they'd encountered. It was domestic in a way Charlotte had never experienced, and she found herself looking forward to those evening conversations more than she wanted to admit. Cade was brilliant, there was no other word for it. He'd read extensively about pack dynamics, territorial disputes, and supernatural politics. When Charlotte showed him her growing file of evidence about the border markers, he helped her organize it, pointed out patterns she'd missed, and suggested strategies for protecting the pack despite Dominic's refusal to acknowledge the threat. "You should be Beta," Charlotte said one evening as they pored over maps of pack territory. "You have the tactical mind for it, the intelligence, the capability." "I have the scars that make people uncomfortable," Cade corrected without bitterness. He'd stopped hiding his scarred side from her, she'd noticed. Stopped angling himself away when they talked. "Nathan's a good Beta. He listens to people, keeps the peace. I just intimidate everyone. Nathan's adequate. You'd be exceptional." Charlotte traced a line on the map. "Look at this, you identified 3 potential weak points in our defenses that our actual security team missed. That's not Omega work, Cade. That's leadership-level strategy. Strategy one can't use because no one would listen to me." He leaned back and Charlotte caught a glimpse of frustration before he shut it down. "It's fine. I've accepted my place in this pack. Have you? Or have you just stopped fighting because fighting hurt too much?" Cade's eyes snapped to hers. "What do you want me to say, Charlotte? That it kills me to be treated like I'm worthless when I know I could contribute so much more? That I lie awake at night thinking about all the ways I could help this pack thrive if anyone gave me a chance? That being Omega isn't about my abilities, but about Dominic needing someone to grind down to make himself feel powerful?" "Yes," Charlotte said quietly. "I want you to say all of that. I want you to stop pretending it doesn't hurt. Why? What difference does it make? Because you matter. Your pain matters. And pretending you've accepted it just lets them keep hurting you." She reached across the table and grabbed his hand, his scarred left hand, which he usually kept hidden. "You're not broken, Cade. You're not worthless. And you shouldn't have to accept being treated like you are." Cade stared at their joined hands, at the way her fingers wrapped around his damaged ones without hesitation. "You're dangerous," he said finally. "What? You make me hope. And hope is dangerous for someone in my position." His eyes met hers, dark and intense. "In a year you'll leave. And I'll still be here, still be Omega, still be the beast. But now I'll remember what it felt like to have someone believe I was worth something. That's going to make going back to normal so much harder." Charlotte felt her chest tighten. What if you didn't have to go back to normal? What if we change things? You can't change a whole pack's perception in a year. Maybe not. But I can change mine. And maybe that's enough to start. She squeezed his hand. "I'm not your enemy, Cade. I never have been. And I don't want to be the person who makes your life harder, just by existing in it." Before Cade could respond, a howl split the night, urgent, aggressive, coming from the direction of the pack center. They were on their feet instantly, both of them moving toward the door. Charlotte grabbed her tracking pack, Cade grabbed weapons, and they were running toward the sound before either consciously decided to respond. The scene at pack center was chaos. A group of rogues, at least 10 of them, had somehow gotten past the border patrols and were attacking civilians. Pack warriors were responding, but they'd been caught off guard and people were injured. Charlotte shifted mid-run, her wolf form faster and more agile. She could hear Cade behind her, his larger wolf keeping pace despite the size difference. She hit the fight at full speed, taking down a rogue who'd been advancing on a group of pups. Her teeth found his throat and she didn't hesitate. Rogues who attack children didn't deserve mercy. Around her the battle raged. Charlotte fought with the precision of a train tracker, using speed and strategy over brute force. And then she saw him, Cade, in his massive wolf form, and he was magnificent. He fought like a force of nature, all power and controlled violence. The scars that marked his human form were less visible in wolf shape, but his size and ferocity more than made up for it. He protected the vulnerable pack members, positioning himself between the rogues and those who couldn't fight, and systematically took down any threat that got too close. This wasn't an Omega. This was a warrior. The fight lasted maybe 10 minutes, though it felt like hours. By the end, 3 rogues were dead, 5 were captured, and 2 had escaped. Pack members were injured but alive, and the pups were safe. Charlotte shifted back to human form, breathing hard, and found clothes that someone had brought for those who'd shifted. Around her, she could hear the aftermath. Warriors congratulating each other, healers tending to injuries, Alpha Dominic arriving late to the scene and trying to take command of a situation that was already resolved. And then she saw them, the pack members staring at Cade, who'd shifted back and was standing at the edge of the crowd, covered in blood that wasn't his own. For once, they weren't looking at him with disgust or pity. They were looking at him with shocked respect. He took down 3 rogues by himself, one warrior said, disbelief clear in his voice. Protected the pups without a scratch on any of them, another added. Did you see the way he fought? Like a beta. Like an alpha. Dominic's expression went from shock to fury in an instant. Everyone back to your homes, he commanded. Warriors, secure the captured rogues. We'll debrief in the morning. As people dispersed, Dominic's eyes found Cade, and the hatred there was palpable. Charlotte moved to stand beside her husband. When had she started thinking of him that way? Presenting a united front. Blackwood, Dominic said coldly. What were you doing at Pack Center? Your duties are at the training grounds. Responding to a threat, Cade replied evenly. Same as every other pack member. You were specifically assigned to the training grounds this evening. And when I heard the attack howl, I responded. Should I have just stayed at the cabin and let rogues kill pack members? It was a direct challenge, and Charlotte could see Dominic's rage building. The Alpha had been undermined again, this time by the Omega he'd spent years crushing, who'd just proven he was more capable than half the warrior class. We'll discuss your insubordination later, Dominic said through clenched teeth. Report to my office first thing tomorrow. After he stalked away, Charlotte turned to Cade. That was incredible. You saved lives tonight. I did what any pack member would do. But she could see the satisfaction in his eyes, the vindication. For once he'd been able to show what he was truly capable of. They walked back to the cabin together, both still riding the adrenaline of the fight. Once inside, Charlotte watched Cade move around the small space, his movements showing none of the usual hunching, none of the attempts to make himself smaller. You're walking differently, she observed. Cade paused. What? You're not hiding. Not making yourself smaller or angling away. You're taking up space like you have a right to be here. He looked down at himself, seemed to realize she was right, and a complex expression crossed his face. Fighting does that. Makes me forget, for a little while, that I'm supposed to be ashamed of existing. You should never be ashamed of existing. Charlotte moved closer. Cade, you were amazing tonight. Everyone saw it. They can't pretend you're just a useless Omega anymore. Watch them try, Cade said with bitter amusement. By tomorrow, they'll have convinced themselves it was adrenaline or luck, or that the rogues were particularly weak. People believe what they want to believe. But you know the truth. I know the truth. Charlotte grabbed his hand again. And maybe that's enough. Cade looked at their joined hands, at the blood still drying on both of them from the fight, at the way Charlotte held onto him like he was something precious instead of something shameful. You keep doing that, he said quietly. Touching me. Holding my hand. Like it doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother me. It should. Everyone else. I'm not everyone else. Charlotte stepped closer. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I see you, Cade. Not the scars, not the Omega status. You. The person who makes me coffee every morning, who helps me with strategy, who just saved a dozen lives without hesitation. That's who you are. Not what Dominic or anyone else says. The air between them felt charged, heavy with something Charlotte didn't want to name. They were standing too close, in the aftermath of battle, both of them running hot with adrenaline and emotion. Charlotte, Cade said, and his voice had gone rough. We should. A knock at the door shattered the moment. They sprang apart and Charlotte answered to find Nathan, Dominic's beta, looking uncomfortable. Charlotte, Cade, I need to talk to both of you. Can I come in? They let him in, and Nathan settled onto the couch with obvious unease. I'm here unofficially. Dominic doesn't know I'm talking to you, and I'd like to keep it that way. What's going on? Charlotte asked. Dominic's furious about tonight. About Cade specifically. Nathan looked at Cade. You showed the pack what you're capable of. You made Dominic look weak by comparison. He can't let that stand. What's he planning? Cade's voice was resigned, like he'd been expecting this. I don't know yet, but it won't be good. He's already talking about reassigning you to worse duties, making your life harder. And Charlotte, Nathan turned to her. He's looking for an excuse to separate you two. He thinks if he breaks up the marriage, he can crush both of you independently. He can't dissolve our marriage, Charlotte protested. He forced it on us. The council. The council doesn't care about forced marriages between Omega and mid-rank wolves. You're not important enough for them to intervene. Nathan's expression was sympathetic. I'm telling you this because I like both of you, and because Dominic's getting increasingly unstable. Watch yourselves. Don't give him ammunition. After Nathan left, Charlotte and Cade looked at each other. This is going to get worse, Cade said. Everything I do to prove I'm capable just makes Dominic more determined to break me. Then we fight back. Charlotte's jaw was set. We're stronger together than apart. Let him try to separate us. We'll prove him wrong every time. Charlotte, you don't understand what he's capable of. I understand perfectly. I just don't care. She moved back to him, back into that charged space. I'm not letting him win, Cade. Not against you, not against us. Whatever he throws at us, we face it together. Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much? Charlotte realized she didn't have a good answer. Or rather, she had an answer she wasn't ready to admit. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks this forced marriage had stopped feeling forced. Somewhere between shared breakfasts and evening strategy sessions and watching Cade fight like a warrior tonight, she'd started to actually care about him. Not as a roommate or a temporary husband or a project. As a person. As a partner. Maybe even as something more. But admitting that would complicate everything, so instead she said, because it's right. Because you deserve better. And because I'm apparently incapable of letting injustice go unchallenged. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough for now. Cade studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Together then. Whatever comes. Together, Charlotte agreed. And as they prepared for bed, Cade on his uncomfortable couch, Charlotte in the bedroom that didn't feel like hers, both of them wondered how much longer they could maintain the fiction that this marriage was temporary, that they'd walk away from each other in a year without looking back. Because the truth neither of them wanted to admit was becoming harder to ignore. This forced marriage was starting to feel like the realest thing either of them had ever had. And that was far more dangerous than any rogue attack. Chapter 5, The Midpoint Revelation. The next morning, Dominic's retribution came swiftly. Cade was summoned to the Alpha's office, and Charlotte insisted on going with him despite Cade's protests. He wants to meet with me alone, Cade argued as they walked toward Pack Center. Too bad. I'm your wife. Where you go, I go. Charlotte's tone brooked no argument. Besides, having a witness might keep him from doing something really stupid. Dominic's office was in the main Pack building. A space designed to intimidate with its dark wood and displays of power. The Alpha sat behind his massive desk, his expression thunderous as Charlotte and Cade entered. I didn't send for you, Charlotte, Dominic said coldly. She's my wife. She stays. Cade's voice was firm, and Charlotte felt a flutter of warmth at his immediate defense. Dominic's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push. Fine. Blackwood, your performance last night was concerning. Concerning. Charlotte couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. He saved lives. Protected pups. How is that concerning? Because he disobeyed direct orders to remain at the training grounds. Because he overstepped his position as Omega. Because Dominic's mask slipped, showing the rage beneath. Because he made my warriors look incompetent by comparison. So you're punishing him for being effective? Charlotte demanded. That's insane. That's hierarchy. Something you both seem to struggle with understanding. Dominic leaned forward. Here's how this is going to work. Blackwood, you're reassigned to the furthest patrol route. 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, starting immediately. You'll patrol alone, you'll report to me directly, and you'll have no contact with other pack members during your duties. It was effectively solitary confinement with the added danger of being alone on the most remote patrol route. If rogues attacked, Cade would have no backup. That's a death sentence, Charlotte said flatly. The northern route borders 3 different rogue territories. No one patrols it alone. Blackwood does now. Unless he'd prefer to reject the assignment and accept exile instead. Dominic's smile was cruel. I'll do it, Cade said before Charlotte could protest further. When do I start? Tomorrow. You have today to prepare. Dismissed. They left the office, Charlotte shaking with rage, Cade eerily calm. We're not accepting this, Charlotte said the moment they were out of earshot. We'll go to the council, We'll do nothing. Cade kept walking. The council doesn't care about Omega assignments. This is within Dominic's rights as Alpha. Even if it's vindictive, fighting it will just make things worse. So what, you just accept this? I've been accepting things my whole life, Charlotte. This is just one more. They reached the cabin and Cade started pulling out supplies, weapons, emergency gear, provisions. I'll need to pack for extended patrols. The northern route has a small shelter about halfway through. I can use that as a base. Charlotte watched him move around with mechanical efficiency, and something in her chest cracked. Stop. Stop what? Stop acting like this is fine. Like being sent on a suicide mission is just another day in your life. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. This is Dominic trying to kill you. You understand that, right? He's hoping rogues will finish what he can't do himself. I know. Cade's expression was resigned. But what choice do I have? Exile means death anyway. At least this way I might survive. We could run. Both of us. Leave the pack, find somewhere else. And go where? Lone wolves don't last long, Charlotte. You know that. He cupped her face gently, and Charlotte felt her breath catch at the unexpected intimacy of the gesture. This was always going to happen. Dominic was always going to find a way to get rid of me. Last night just accelerated his timeline. I won't let you die, Charlotte said fiercely. I'll go with you. We'll patrol together. You can't. You have your own duties, and Dominic would just use that as an excuse to exile both of us. Cade's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I need you here safe, continuing to document the border markers. Someone has to protect this pack. Even if Dominic's too stupid to realize it needs protecting. Cade, promise me. Promise you'll stay here, keep doing your job, and not do anything stupid trying to help me. Charlotte wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, wanted to do exactly what he was asking her not to. But looking into his eyes, seeing the determination there mixed with resignation, she realized something that made her heart stop. She was in love with him. Completely, irrevocably, in love with the man she'd been forced to marry. The realization hit like a physical blow. At some point over the past few weeks, Cade had stopped being her punishment and had become her partner. Her friend. Something more than either. And now he was being sent on a suicide mission, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I promise, she heard herself say, even though the words tasted like ash. But you have to promise me something too. What? Come back. Every day, no matter what, you come back to me. Charlotte's voice cracked. I can't. I need you to come back, Cade. Something shifted in his expression, some wall cracking that had been firmly in place before. Charlotte, But before he could finish, a commotion outside drew their attention. They rushed to the porch to find Nathan running toward them, looking panicked. The rogues we captured last night, they escaped? Nathan gasped. All 5 of them. Someone let them out of holding, and they've taken a hostage. Who? Charlotte demanded. Hannah, the healer's daughter. She's 9 years old. Nathan's expression was grim. They left a message. They want Cade. Charlotte felt ice flood her veins. What? They said Cade has 6 hours to meet them at the old copper mine on the northern border. He comes alone, they let Hannah go. He doesn't show, they kill her. Nathan looked at Cade. This is a trap. They're using the girl to draw you out. Obviously, Cade said, already moving toward his weapons. But that doesn't change what I have to do. You can't go alone, Charlotte started, but Cade cut her off. I have to. If warriors show up, they'll kill Hannah immediately. At least if I go alone, she has a chance. He was strapping on weapons with practiced efficiency. Nathan, get healers on standby. Charlotte. Don't you dare tell me to stay here, Charlotte snarled. I was going to say, give me a 5-minute head start, then follow at a distance. If they see you, they might kill the girl. But I could use backup once she's safe. Cade's eyes met hers. Trust me. Charlotte wanted to argue, wanted to demand a better plan, wanted to do anything except watch him walk into an obvious trap. But she also knew he was right. Hannah's only chance was if Cade played along. 5 minutes, she agreed. Not a second longer. Cade nodded, then did something that shocked them both. He pulled Charlotte into a fierce kiss, his scarred hand cupping the back of her head, his lips demanding and desperate against hers. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. In case I don't get another chance, you need to know that these past few weeks have been the best of my life. You made me remember what it feels like to be treated like a person. Thank you for that. Cade, don't you dare act like this is goodbye. 5 minutes, he said. And then he was gone, shifting mid-run and disappearing into the forest as a massive wolf. Charlotte stood frozen on the porch, her lips still tingling from the kiss. her heart racing with fear and love and desperate hope. "He's going to get himself killed," Nathan said quietly. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Charlotte turned to him. "Nathan, I need you to do something. Get every warrior you trust, ones who aren't blindly loyal to Dominic, and have them ready to move. If this goes wrong, if Cade needs help, I want backup available. Dominic will see it as undermining his authority. I don't care. Cade is my husband, and I'm not letting him die for a pack that's never appreciated him." Charlotte's voice was steel. "Are you with me or not?" Nathan studied her for a long moment. "I'm with you. Always thought Dominic's treatment of Cade was wrong anyway. Let me make some calls." As Nathan left, Charlotte shifted and headed into the forest, following Cade's scent. She'd given him his 5 minutes. Now she was going to make damn sure he lived through whatever trap was waiting at that mine, because she just figured out she was in love with him. And she'd be damned if she lost him before she got a chance to tell him. Chapter 6, Darkest Hour. The old copper mine sat at the edge of pack territory, a relic from a century ago that had long been abandoned. Charlotte approached cautiously, staying downwind and using every tracking skill she possessed to remain undetected. She could see Cade's massive wolf form at the mine entrance, facing 5 rogues who had young Hannah trapped between them. The girl was terrified but unharmed, her eyes wide as she recognized Cade. The beast came. One of the rogues, a scarred male with cruel eyes, laughed. "Didn't think you'd actually show up alone. I'm here. Let the girl go." Cade's voice was steady despite the impossible odds. "Oh, we'll let her go. After we finish with you." The rogue leader circled closer. "See, we heard about the famous Omega, the pack's punching bag. And we thought, what better way to demoralize the Ironwood pack than to kill their most pathetic member? Show them even their weakest isn't safe." Charlotte's blood ran cold. This wasn't about Hannah at all. This was an assassination attempt disguised as a hostage exchange. "Let Hannah go first," Cade repeated. "Then you can do whatever you want with me. You're not in a position to negotiate, beast." The rogue leader smiled. "But sure, we'll let her go. After we make sure you can't follow." He lunged and the other 4 rogues attacked simultaneously. Cade shifted to meet them, his massive form impressive but outnumbered. Charlotte watched in horror as they swarmed him, their coordinated attacks suggesting they planned this specifically to take down a large opponent. Hannah screamed as one rogue grabbed her, using her as a shield. "Stay back, beast, or the pup dies." Cade froze mid-attack and Charlotte saw her opening. She burst from the trees in her wolf form, going straight for the rogue holding Hannah. She hit him hard enough to break his grip, snatched the girl by her shirt, and threw her toward the forest. "Run!" Charlotte commanded, her mental voice reaching Hannah through pack bonds. "Get to safety. Now!" Hannah ran and Charlotte whirled to face the rogues. But she'd given away her position, and now all 5 were focused on both her and Cade. "Well, well," the leader said. "The head tracker. This just keeps getting better. Kill them both." The fight that followed was brutal. Charlotte and Cade fought back to back, their movements finding a rhythm despite never having trained together. She was speed and precision, he was power and protection, and together they held off the 5 rogues for longer than should have been possible. But it wasn't enough. Charlotte felt teeth sink into her shoulder, felt claws rake across her ribs. She heard Cade snarl of rage as he killed the rogue who'd hurt her, but then 3 more were on him, dragging him down through sheer numbers. Charlotte tried to reach him, tried to fight her way through, but another rogue blocked her path. She was bleeding, exhausted, and there were still too many enemies. This was it. They were going to die here. Then she heard it, howls from multiple wolves getting closer fast. Nathan had brought backup. The rogues heard it too and immediately scattered, their leader snarling, "This isn't over," as they disappeared into the forest. Warriors burst into the clearing, Nathan at the front and Charlotte's legs gave out. She shifted back to human form, naked and bleeding, as Nathan rushed to her side with a blanket. "Cade," she gasped. "Where's Cade?" She looked around frantically and found him, still in wolf form, lying too still on the ground, covered in blood and wounds. A healer was already rushing to him, and Charlotte tried to stand, tried to reach him, but her injuries made her vision swim. "Easy," Nathan said. "You're hurt bad, Charlotte. Let the healers work." "Cade, is he?" She couldn't finish the question. "He's alive. Barely. They did a number on him." Nathan's expression was grim. "Hannah's safe though. She made it back to Pack Center and that's how we knew to come. You saved her life." "We both did." Charlotte's eyes were locked on Cade's still form as healers worked frantically on him. "Nathan, don't let them take him to Pack Center. Dominic will." "I know. I already told the healers to bring him to your cabin. He'll recover there." Nathan's hand on her shoulder was gentle. "You both will." That was incredibly brave, Charlotte. And incredibly stupid. I couldn't let him die alone. "I know. That's why it was brave." Nathan helped her to her feet as a healer approached to tend to her wounds. But Charlotte? Dominic is going to lose his mind when he hears about this. You disobeyed direct orders you brought back up without his authorization, and you proved that Cade is valuable enough to risk your life for. He's going to retaliate. Let him try, Charlotte said through gritted teeth as the healer cleaned her wounds. I'm done playing by his rules. They brought both Charlotte and Cade back to the cabin, the healers working on both of them simultaneously. Cade's injuries were severe, deep lacerations, broken ribs, and massive blood loss. But he was alive, and the healers assured Charlotte he'd recover with time. He'll be out for at least a day, the head healer, a kind woman named Grace, told Charlotte. His body needs to heal and he needs rest. Same goes for you. Those shoulder wounds need time to close properly. After the healers left, Charlotte sat beside Cade's unconscious form. They'd put him in the bedroom since he needed the real bed more than she did. She held his scarred hand, running her thumb over the damaged knuckles, and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Terror that he'd die. Relief that he was alive. Love that she could no longer deny. You're an idiot, she told his unconscious form. Walking into an obvious trap like that. Thinking I just let you go alone. Her voice cracked. You scared the hell out of me, Cade Blackwood. Don't ever do that again. She stayed there all night, dozing in the chair beside the bed, refusing to leave his side. The pack came by periodically. Nathan checking in, Grace changing bandages, even some warriors who looked uncomfortable, but muttered thanks for saving Hannah. None of them mentioned that Cade had been willing to die for that little girl. None of them acknowledged what that said about the man they dismissed as worthless. Dominic predictably was furious. He sent a message through Nathan that both Charlotte and Cade were to report to his office the moment they were healed, that there would be consequences for their insubordination. Charlotte sent back a message that was just 2 words. Fuck off. Nathan delivered it with barely suppressed glee. Cade woke 36 hours after the attack, his eyes opening slowly as consciousness returned. The first thing he saw was Charlotte, asleep in the chair beside his bed, her hand still holding his. Charlotte, he rasped, his throat dry. She jerked awake immediately. Cade. Oh, thank God you're awake. How do you feel? Like I got torn apart by 5 rogues. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Hannah. Safe. You saved her. We both did. Charlotte helped him settle back against the pillows. You've been unconscious for almost 2 days. The healer said you were lucky. A few more minutes and you wouldn't have made it. You came for me. It wasn't a question. Of course I did. Did you really think I'd just let you walk into that trap alone? I told you not to follow. And I ignored you. Because I'm not in the habit of letting the people I love die if I can prevent it. The words slipped out before Charlotte could stop them and she froze. Cade stared at her. What did you say? Charlotte could have backtracked, could have claimed she meant it platonically, could have done anything except what she actually did, which was double down. I said I love you. I'm in love with you, Cade. And I know that complicates everything. I know we were supposed to divorce in a year. I know this was just supposed to be a punishment marriage. But somewhere between shared breakfasts and evening strategy sessions and watching you nearly die for a child you barely know, I fell in love with you. She took a shaky breath. So there. That's the truth. Do with it what you will. For a long moment, Cade just looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he said, Come here. What? Come here, Charlotte. Please. She moved from the chair to sit carefully on the edge of the bed, and Cade reached up with his good hand to cup her face. I've been in love with you for 2 weeks, he said quietly. Since that morning you defended me in front of the warriors. Since you held my scarred hand without flinching. Since you looked at me and saw a person instead of a monster. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. I told myself it was stupid, that you'd leave in a year anyway, that I shouldn't let myself feel things that would only hurt me later. But I couldn't help it. You love me. Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper. Completely. Desperately. I love you, Charlotte Hayes. Even though I have no right to. Even though I'm still the Pax Omega and you're the head tracker and this whole thing is insane. I love you. Charlotte leaned down and kissed him, careful of his injuries, pouring every ounce of feeling into it. When they parted, both were breathing hard. So what do we do now? Charlotte asked. We're in love, but we're still trapped in this pack with an alpha who wants us dead or gone. We can't just. We leave, Cade said firmly. What? We leave. Both of us. We find another pack or we go lone for a while until we find somewhere that will take us. But we don't stay here, Charlotte. Not anymore. His eyes were fierce. I'm done being Omega. I'm done accepting Dominic's abuse. And I'm definitely done watching him try to hurt you for the crime of treating me like I'm worth something. Leaving means giving up everything. Our positions, our status, our ties to this pack. Our ties to a pack that doesn't value us. That uses us and discards us and punishes us for being effective. Cade's jaw was set. I'd rather be a lone wolf with you than spend another day here pretending this is acceptable. Charlotte thought about it. About giving up the only home she'd ever known. About leaving the pack that had raised her. Even if that pack didn't appreciate her. And she thought about a future with Cade. Free from Dominic's tyranny, able to build something real, to be partners in every sense of the word. Okay, she said. We leave. But we do it smart. We gather supplies, we research other packs that might take us, we make sure we have a destination. And we leave on our terms, not Dominic's. Agreed. Cade pulled her down for another kiss. How are you so perfect? I'm not perfect. I'm stubborn and occasionally reckless, and I just decided to abandon my pack for a man I've known for less than a month. Best decision you've ever made, Cade said with a smile that transformed his scarred face into something beautiful. Yeah, Charlotte agreed softly. It really is. They spent the rest of the day planning, quietly, carefully, making sure no one overheard. Nathan, when he visited, took one look at them and said, You're leaving, aren't you? How did you know? Charlotte asked. Because I've seen the way you two look at each other. And because I know what Dominic's planning. Nathan's expression was serious. He's going to exile both of you at the next pack meeting. He's already building a case. Insubordination, unauthorized warfare, undermining Alpha authority. He'll make it official, and you'll have 3 days to leave territory. So we beat him to it, Cade said. We leave before he can exile us. On our terms. Where will you go? There's a pack in Oregon that's more progressive. They value skill over appearance, merit over tradition. Charlotte had been researching for hours. Their Alpha is younger, supposedly fair. It's worth a shot. Nathan nodded slowly. When? 3 days. We need time to gather supplies to make sure we're prepared. Charlotte looked at her friend. Nathan, we can't tell anyone. If Dominic finds out, I won't say a word. But Charlotte. Nathan grabbed her hand. Are you sure about this? You're giving up a lot. I'm giving up a pack that never valued me. I'm gaining a future with someone who does. She looked at Cade, at the love clear in his eyes despite the years of pain he'd endured. That's not a sacrifice, Nathan. That's a gift. Over the next 3 days, Charlotte and Cade prepared in secret. They gathered supplies, transferred money from pack accounts to personal ones, researched routes and safe houses. And they did it all while pretending nothing had changed, maintaining their routine so no one would suspect. On the morning of the 3rd day before dawn broke, they packed their bags and stood on the porch of the cabin they'd shared for just under a month. Ready? Charlotte asked. With you? Always. Cade took her hand. Let's go build that impossible future. They shifted and ran, 2 wolves disappearing into the forest as the sun rose behind them. By the time the pack realized they were gone, Charlotte and Cade were 50 miles away and still running. Running toward freedom. Toward a future they'd choose for themselves. Toward a life where scars didn't matter and love did. And in the cabin they'd left behind, Nathan found a note. Thank you for being a friend when no one else would. Tell Dominic we quit. We refused to accept his version of what we should be. We're building our own story now on our terms. C&C. Chapter 7 The Turning Point. The Crescent Moon Pack territory was nothing like Ironwood. Where Dominic's pack had been rigid and hierarchical, Alpha Marcus's pack was relaxed, welcoming even. Charlotte and Cade had arrived at the border 2 days after leaving Ironwood, exhausted and wary. They'd expected suspicion, maybe hostility. Instead, they were greeted by a beta named Sarah who smiled warmly and said, We've been expecting you. Expecting us? Charlotte had exchanged a confused glance with Cade. Nathan sent word ahead. Said 2 excellent wolves were coming our way, and we'd be fools not to welcome you. Sarah's eyes had landed on Cade's scars without flinching. I'm guessing you're Cade Blackwood? Nathan said you were one hell of a fighter. That had been the first surprise. The second was Alpha Marcus himself. A man in his early 40s with kind eyes and a genuinely welcoming demeanor. Charlotte, Cade, welcome to Crescent Moon. Nathan vouched for you both, and his word carries weight here. Marcus had gestured for them to sit in his office. Tell me your story. So they had. Everything: the forced marriage, the Omega status, Dominic's abuse, the attack at the mine, and their decision to leave. Marcus had listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as they spoke. Dominic's an embarrassment to Alphas everywhere, he'd said when they finished. Using pack law to abuse members, forced marriages, sending wolves on suicide missions, the council should strip his status. He'd leaned forward. Here's what I can offer you. Trial membership for 3 months. You work, you contribute, you see if Crescent Moon is a good fit. If it is, we make it permanent. If not, no hard feelings and I'll help you find somewhere else. Just like that. Cade had been suspicious. You're not worried about taking in an Omega? We don't use that designation here. Everyone contributes based on their skills. Not some arbitrary hierarchy based on appearance or bloodline. Marcus had smiled. Charlotte, we could use a skill tracker. Cade, Nathan says you have a tactical mind and considerable fighting ability. Both of those are valuable here. Your scars don't factor into the equation at all. Now, 2 weeks later, Charlotte and Cade were settling into their new life. They'd been given a small house on the edge of packed territory, larger than their cabin, with an actual bedroom that Cade didn't have to sleep on the couch. Charlotte had been assigned to the tracking team and immediately impressed everyone with her skills. Cade had been brought into the warrior program, where his fighting abilities and strategic thinking were not just acknowledged but celebrated. "This is surreal," Charlotte said one evening as they prepared dinner together in their new kitchen. "People actually respect us here. They see Cade's scars and just don't care." "It's going to take some getting used to," Cade admitted. He was still adjusting, still sometimes angling his scarred side away, still expecting rejection that never came. "But it's nice. Really nice. More than nice. It's what we should have had all along." Charlotte moved to stand in front of him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I'm glad we left. Best decision we ever made." Cade pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Second best. The best decision was you not running screaming the first night we were forced together. Third best, actually. The absolute best decision was falling in love with you." They kissed and it was sweet and unhurried, full of the comfort of knowing they had time now. No death curse, no vindictive Alpha. No countdown to a forced separation. Just them building a life together. A knock interrupted them. Sarah stood at the door with a complicated expression. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Charlotte, Cade. Alpha Marcus needs you both at PAC Center. Now." They exchanged worried glances but followed Sarah through the territory. When they reached the meeting hall, they found it packed with PAC members, all focused on a group of unfamiliar wolves standing before Alpha Marcus. Charlotte felt her heart sink as she recognized the lead wolf. Dominic. "Ah, there they are," Dominic said with false pleasantness. "Charlotte, Cade. How nice to see you found a new pack. Though I'm afraid I have bad news." "What are you doing here?" Charlotte demanded. "Collecting what's mine. You see, when you fled Ironwood territory you violated pack law. Marriage bonds aren't dissolved just because you run away." Dominic's smile was cruel. "I've come to demand your return. Both of you." "They're not going anywhere," Marcus said firmly. "They requested asylum which I granted. They're under my protection now. With respect, Alpha Marcus, they're still legally bound to Ironwood Pack. Charlotte holds a rank position. Cade is, well, he's Omega but still technically a member. I have every right to demand their return." "The council doesn't recognize forced marriages," Charlotte said. "You can't. The council recognizes marriages performed under pack law with witnesses." "Which yours was?" Dominic pulled out documents. "I have the paperwork right here. Legal binding, recognized by supernatural law. You're both still members of Ironwood Pack, and I'm exercising my right as Alpha to recall you." Marcus studied the documents, his expression growing troubled. "This complicates things." "It really doesn't," Cade said flatly. "We're not going back. Exile us if you want, Dominic. We don't want to be part of your pack." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong. I don't want to exile you. I want you to come back and face proper discipline for your desertion." Dominic's eyes gleamed with malice. "Charlotte, you'll be stripped of your rank and assigned to the lowest duties. Cade, you'll be sent on permanent border patrol, alone of course. And this time when rogues attack, there won't be anyone to save you." "You're describing murder," Marcus said coldly. "I won't allow you to take pack members to their deaths. Then you're harboring deserters, which violates council law. I could bring this before them, have your pack sanctioned, maybe even challenge your Alpha status." Dominic was enjoying this, the power play. "Or you could simply return what's mine, and we all go our separate ways." Charlotte felt trapped. They'd escaped, built something good here, found a pack that valued them, and Dominic was going to destroy it all out of spite. "There's another option," Cade said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Challenge. Alpha challenge." Cade's voice was steady despite the audacity of what he was suggesting. "You want us back? Fine. But first you have to prove you're worthy of leading us. Fight me. Alpha challenge. If you win, we return with no argument. If I win, you release us from Ironwood Pack permanently and never contact us again." The room went completely silent. "You're challenging me?" Dominic's laugh was disbelieving. "You, the Omega, the Beast, think you can challenge an Alpha? I know I can beat you. You're weak, Dominic. You maintain control through fear and politics, not strength. Without your title and your pack backing you up, you're nothing." Cade stepped forward. "So prove me wrong. Accept my challenge. Unless you're scared." Dominic's face flushed with rage. "Fine. I accept. We fight tomorrow at dawn. And when I tear you apart, everyone will see exactly why you were Omega in the first place." "Looking forward to it," Cade said calmly. After Dominic and his warriors left to find lodging, Marcus pulled Charlotte and Cade aside. "Are you insane?" he demanded. Alpha challenges are to the death, Cade. If you lose. I won't lose, Cade said with absolute certainty. I've been fighting my whole life, Marcus. Fighting to survive, fighting to prove my worth, fighting just to be allowed to exist. Dominic's been coasting on his title for years. He's not prepared for someone who actually wants to win. But if something goes wrong, then Charlotte gets to stay here, safe and valued, and I'll die knowing I tried. Cade looked at Charlotte. That's a trade I'm willing to make. Don't talk like that, Charlotte said, grabbing his hand. You're not going to die. You're going to beat him and we're going to be free, and we're going to build the life we've been planning. Always the optimist, Cade said with a soft smile. That night, Charlotte couldn't sleep. She lay in bed next to Cade, listening to his breathing, trying not to think about tomorrow's fight. I can hear you thinking, Cade said in the darkness. Talk to me. I'm terrified, Charlotte admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if he fights dirty? What if I win? Cade interrupted gently. What if I finally get to prove to everyone, including myself, that I'm not weak, not broken, not worthless? What if tomorrow is the day I take back everything Dominic tried to steal from me? You already proved that. Every day you survived his abuse, every time you stayed kind despite cruelty, every moment you chose to be better than the people who hurt you. You proved you were stronger than him. Maybe. But tomorrow I get to make it official. Cade turned to face her in the darkness. Charlotte, I need you to understand something. If I lose tomorrow, if the worst happens, you stay here. You don't go back to Ironwood, you don't try to avenge me, you just live. Promise me. I can't promise that. Try. Please. Because knowing you're safe, knowing you have a good pack and a good life, that's the only thing that will let me fight without fear tomorrow. Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I promise I'll stay here. But I'm not promising not to make Dominic's life hell if he kills you. That's the best you're getting. Cade laughed softly. I'll take it. He pulled her close. I love you, Charlotte. No matter what happens tomorrow, I need you to know that these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. You saved me too, Charlotte whispered. I was so angry before you, so focused on being right that I forgot to actually live. You taught me what matters. So you better win tomorrow because I'm not done learning from you yet. Yes, ma'am, Cade said, and kissed her like it might be the last time. Though if he had anything to say about it, it would be the first of thousands more. Chapter 8. Climactic Resolution. Dawn broke cold and clear. The Crescent Moon Pack gathered in their fighting grounds. A large circular area surrounded by stands where pack members could watch challenges. Alpha challenges were rare enough that even knowing Cade and Charlotte weren't technically Crescent Moon members yet, everyone wanted to witness this. Dominic arrived with his warriors, looking confident and well-rested. Cade stood opposite him, his scars stark in the early morning light, his expression calm. Last chance to back down, beast, Dominic called across the circle. Admit you're not worthy of challenging an alpha, and I'll make your deaths quick instead of slow. I'm not backing down, Cade replied. And stop calling me beast. My name is Cade Blackwood, and after today you're going to remember it. Alpha Marcus stepped into the center of the circle, his voice carrying to everyone watching. This is an official alpha challenge, called by Cade Blackwood of the former Ironwood Pack against Dominic of Ironwood Pack. The terms. If Dominic wins, Cade and Charlotte return to Ironwood territory. If Cade wins, Dominic releases all claims on both of them permanently. The fight is to submission or death. Do both fighters accept these terms? I accept, Dominic said. I accept, Cade confirmed. Then let the challenge begin. Marcus stepped back, and the two wolves circled each other. Charlotte stood at the edge of the fighting grounds, her heart in her throat, every muscle tense with fear and hope. Dominic struck first, fast and vicious, going for Cade's throat. But Cade was ready, sidestepping and using Dominic's momentum against him, sending the alpha stumbling past. You're slower than I expected, Cade commented. Years behind a desk will do that. Dominic snarled and attacked again, and this time they collided with bone-jarring force. They grappled, teeth and claws finding purchase, both wolves dealing and receiving damage. But Charlotte could see what maybe Dominic couldn't. Cade was holding back. Testing. Learning Dominic's patterns, his tells, his weaknesses. And then Cade stopped holding back. The shift was dramatic. Suddenly Cade was everywhere. Faster than his size suggested possible. Hitting with devastating force, using strategy and skill that years of Omega status hadn't diminished. He'd been training himself in secret, Charlotte realized. Preparing for a moment like this even when he thought it would never come. Dominic began to falter. His attacks became desperate, wild. He was stronger than most wolves, but he'd gotten comfortable in his position. He'd forgotten what it meant to fight against someone who had nothing to lose. Cade didn't have that problem. He'd been fighting for survival his whole life. With a move so fast Charlotte almost missed it, Cade got past Dominic's guard and locked his jaws around the Alpha's throat. Not killing, not yet, but holding. One twist and Dominic would be dead. The fighting ground fell silent. Submit, Cade growled, his voice carrying through the stillness. Submit and this ends. Keep fighting and you die. Your choice. Dominic struggled for a moment, pride warring with survival instinct. Then, finally, he went limp, the universal sign of submission. Cade held the position for a few heartbeats longer, making sure everyone saw, making sure they understood. Then he released Dominic and stepped back. I win, Cade said. The challenge is concluded. Dominic, you will release all claims on both Charlotte and myself. We are no longer members of Ironwood Pack. We are free. Dominic shifted back to human form, bloodied and beaten, his expression a mixture of shock and rage. But he was bound by challenge law, and everyone there had witnessed his submission. Fine, he spat. You're released. Both of you. But don't think this is over. It is over, Alpha Marcus interrupted, stepping forward. You lost the challenge fairly. Honor your word or face council sanction. Those are your options. Dominic glared at them all but finally nodded. They're released. I want nothing more to do with either of them. The feeling is mutual, Charlotte said coldly. As Dominic and his warriors left, humiliated and defeated, Charlotte ran to Cade, who'd shifted back to human form. He caught her as she threw herself into his arms. You won, she said, half laughing, half crying. You actually won. Never doubted it, Cade lied, pulling her close. Well, maybe doubted it a little. But it worked out. Alpha Marcus approached with a broad smile. That was the most impressive display of fighting I've seen in years. Cade, Charlotte, I'd like to formally invite you both to join Crescent Moon Pack. Not as trial members. As full members with all rights and privileges. We accept, Charlotte said immediately, looking at Cade for confirmation. We do, Cade agreed. Thank you, Alpha. For everything. Call me Marcus. We're packed now. He clapped Cade on the shoulder. And Cade? I'm making you my Gamma Third in command. Your tactical skills are wasted on anything less. Charlotte, you're officially head tracker. Consider it a promotion from your old position. The pack erupted in cheers and Charlotte felt tears streaming down her face. They'd done it. They were free, they were safe, they were valued. And they'd done it together. That evening as they returned to their home, their real home in a pack that wanted them, Cade pulled Charlotte into his arms on the porch. Marry me, he said. Charlotte blinked. What? Marry me. For real this time. Not because we're forced to, not as punishment. But because I love you and I want to spend my life with you. Cade's eyes were blazing with emotion. I know we're already married technically, but I want to do it again. Here in Crescent Moon with a pack that supports us. I want vows that mean something. A ceremony that's about us, not about someone else's revenge. Yes, Charlotte said without hesitation. Yes, I'll marry you. Again. As many times as you want. Cade kissed her deep and thorough and full of promise. When they finally came up for air, both were breathless and grinning. I can't believe this is real, Charlotte said. A month ago, I was being forced to marry the Pax Omega as punishment. Now I'm here in a good pack with a man I love who just became Gamma. Planning a real wedding. It's like a fairy tale. Minus the parts where we almost died several times and had to flee our home pack. Those were just plot complications, Charlotte said with a laugh. Every good story needs obstacles. Then I'm glad ours has a happy ending, Cade said, pulling her close again. And standing there on the porch of their new home. In a pack that valued them. Free from the Alpha who tried to break them both, Charlotte thought about how strange life was. She'd been forced to mate with the pack's ugliest werewolf as punishment. Instead, she'd found her soulmate, discovered her own strength, and learned that beauty had nothing to do with scars and everything to do with character. Dominic had tried to humiliate them both. Instead, he'd given them each other. Sometimes Charlotte thought the universe had a funny way of turning punishments into gifts. And she was grateful for every moment of it. Chapter 9. Satisfying conclusion. 3 months later. The Crescent Moon Pack ceremony ground was decorated with flowers and lanterns. Pack members gathered to witness Charlotte and Cade's real wedding. Not the forced, bitter ceremony Dominic had orchestrated, but a genuine celebration of love and commitment. Charlotte wore a dress that Sarah had helped her choose, simple and elegant, making her feel beautiful without being overdone. And when she walked down the aisle and saw Cade waiting for her at the altar, the look on his face made her breath catch. He wasn't hiding. His scarred side was fully visible, and he stood tall and proud in formal attire, looking at Charlotte like she was the most precious thing in the world. Marcus officiated, speaking about bonds that couldn't be broken, about love that triumphed over cruelty, about two wolves who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances and chosen to build something beautiful together. Cade, Marcus said. Do you take Charlotte as your mate, your partner, your equal in all things? I do, Cade said firmly. I promise to honor her, protect her, challenge her when she needs it, and support her always. I promise to be worthy of the love she's given me, and to spend every day proving that forcing us together was the best thing that ever happened to me." Charlotte felt tears streaming down her face. "Charlotte," Marcus continued, "do you take Cade as your mate, your partner, your equal in all things?" "I do," Charlotte said, her voice strong and sure. "I promise to stand beside him, to see past the scars everyone else fixates on, to remind him daily that he's extraordinary. I promise to love him fiercely, to challenge him when he's being stubborn, and to build a life with him that's full of joy and purpose and everything we were denied before. Then by the power vested in me as Alpha of Crescent Moon Pack, I declare you mated, married, and bound by love and law. Cade, you may kiss your wife." Again. The kiss was met with cheers and applause from the pack, and Charlotte laughed against Cade's mouth, feeling more happy than she'd ever been. The celebration that followed was joyous. Music and dancing and food. Pack members congratulating them, sharing stories. Several Crescent Moon wolves told Charlotte that they'd never seen Cade smile so much, that she'd brought light into his life that had been missing for years. Nathan had even made the journey from Ironwood. He'd left that pack shortly after Cade and Charlotte, unable to stomach Dominic's leadership any longer. He now served as a beta in a neighboring pack and had become close friends with both of them. "I'm glad you found this," Nathan said during the reception, pulling them both into a hug. "You deserve it. All of it. We couldn't have done it without you," Charlotte said sincerely. "You vouched for us, Nathan. You gave us a chance when we had nowhere else to go." "You gave yourselves a chance," Nathan corrected. "I just made an introduction. Everything else, the fighting, the building, the love, that was all you." As evening fell and the pack celebration continued, Cade pulled Charlotte away to a quiet spot overlooking the territory. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Ridiculously happy," Charlotte confirmed, leaning back against him. "Though I keep waiting for something to go wrong. It feels too good to be real." "It's real. We're real. And we get to keep this, Charlotte. This life, this pack, each other." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Though I should warn you, Alpha Marcus told me today that he wants to promote you again." "To what?" "I'm already head tracker." "To Gamma. He wants to promote Sarah to Beta, which means my current position opens up. And he thinks you'd be perfect for it." Charlotte turned in his arms to look at him. "Both of us in leadership? That's what we deserve. What we've earned." Cade's smile was soft. "We're good at this, Charlotte. At strategy, at protecting people, at leading. Why shouldn't we do it together?" "Co-Gammas," Charlotte mused. "That's unusual." "So are we. Might as well lean into it." They stood together watching the stars emerge, listening to the celebration continuing behind them, feeling the warmth of pack bonds that were genuine and chosen rather than enforced. "Can I tell you something?" Charlotte said after a while. "Always. When Dominic forced us to marry, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd spend a year being miserable with someone who'd be ashamed of being stuck with me, and then we'd divorce and I'd go back to being alone." She turned to face him fully. "I never imagined this. That the punishment would turn into the best thing that ever happened to me. That I'd find not just a partner but my soulmate. That I'd discover what it means to be truly seen and valued." "I never imagined it either," Cade admitted. "I'd accepted that I'd always be alone. Always be the beast. Always be at the bottom. And then you walked into that hall in your white dress, and you looked at me without flinching. You saw me, Charlotte. Really saw me. And you chose over and over to see past what everyone else fixated on. Because the scars don't matter," Charlotte said firmly. "They never did. You're brilliant and kind and brave and so much more than Dominic or anyone else in that pack ever acknowledged. I didn't fall in love with you despite the scars, Cade. I fell in love with you. All of you, scars included, because of who you are as a person." "I love you," Cade said, pulling her close. "Thank you for being stubborn enough to look past the surface. Thank you for giving us a chance when everyone said we were doomed. Thank you for being worth the effort," Charlotte countered. "And for making the best coffee I've ever had. That was honestly what sealed the deal." Cade laughed, that full genuine laugh that had been so rare when they first met and was now common. "So I won you over with caffeine? Good to know." They kissed under the stars and it was sweet and perfect and full of the promise of countless more moments like this. Because they'd turned tables that were meant to break them. They'd taken a punishment and transformed it into a gift. They'd proven that love didn't care about scars or status, or the intentions of vindictive alphas. Charlotte had been forced to mate with the pack's ugliest werewolf. And in doing so, she'd found the most beautiful soul she'd ever known. Sometimes the worst things that happened to you led to the best things in your life. Sometimes being forced down a path you didn't choose led you exactly where you needed to be. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe knew what it was doing after all. Even if its methods were unconventional. Even if the journey was hard. The destination made it all worthwhile. Charlotte and Cade walked back to the celebration hand in hand, ready to embrace their future as co-Gammas, as mates, as partners in every sense of the word. And behind them the stars shone bright, as if the universe itself was celebrating two souls who'd found each other against all odds, who'd turned a forced marriage into a love story, who'd proven that beauty had nothing to do with scars and everything to do with the heart beneath them. The end. Thank you all so much for joining me on Charlotte and Cade's journey. What an incredible story of love, redemption, and turning the tables on those who tried to break you. If you loved this tale, please drop a comment below and tell me your favorite moment. Was it when Charlotte first offended Cade? The mine rescue? The Alpha challenge? The real wedding? I want to hear what resonated with you. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because I have so many more stories coming your way. Stories of dark romance and supernatural love, of underdogs who become heroes, of love that conquers all obstacles. Thank you for being part of this amazing community. I love each and every one of you, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, never let anyone tell you that you're not worthy. The right person will see your value no matter what others say. Love you all.